Hi, possibility seekers, and welcome to the Art of the Possible with Rob Hartnett. This week we are talking all things Mad Max, and specifically Mad Max 1. Now, to help me along with that is my greatest fan of Mad Max, my co-contributor to this podcast and producer of the podcast, Finn Hartnett. How are you, Finn?
What's up? How you going? I'm doing very well.
Excellent. Now, Finn is a student at Melbourne University at VCA. He's studying screenwriting. So I thought for this podcast, he would be an excellent co-contributor to this particular story on the Art of the Possible, because Mad Max 1, without doubt, would have to go down in history as one of the greatest movies made. It just celebrated its 40th year anniversary. And when I say the greatest movies made on such a short shoestring budget that was basically cobbled together by George Miller and the late Byron Kennedy. Finn, you'd have to agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it was a massive effort on their behalf to get a movie like that made. And it's like inspiration to anyone that wants to make a movie. Because how can I do this? To watch Avengers and look at the budget and like watch Mad Max and you see what they created with like nothing.
Yeah, it was quite incredible. And the interesting part, I think, about Mad Max and why I like to talk about it with the Art of the Possible is because the team, George and Byron specifically, just weren't worried about what people had done and what the rules were and what you could and you couldn't do and what the establishment said. They had a vision, a dream, if you will, a goal, if you will, that they wanted to create something really different. And while Byron was a film producer and a young film producer and done short movies, George, not many people know this, but George was actually a doctor. So George was a doctor, wasn't he? And how did they meet?
They met at a film workshop in Melbourne at one point. I think they both had, obviously Byron already had a great interest, but I think George had an interest as well that was coming to the surface that he wanted to explore. Yeah,
and if I recall, George was also a doctor in the emergency wards, so he got to see, his horrible car accidents and the trauma that came out the back of those things, obviously.
Yeah, and that all comes through in the movie itself. Like, you see the aftermath of some really horrific, like we see the carnage at the beginning, and then we see the scenes in the hospital and Goose as well. Still gives me nightmares, that scene.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with my lack of parenting. When I got you to watch the movie too early, I thought that was a great movie, and I probably introduced you too early to that one.
Very well educated at the Hartnett household.
I had to bring you in early to meet Max Rokstansky. Now, with the movie, Finn, and they decided to come and get this together. Now, I think one of the first things they did, and we talk about one of the principles of leadership is modelling the way, is actually going out there and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. We would like others to follow us. And I think it's really hard to get someone to follow you if you don't actually go and do it yourself. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. You got to do that, especially in filmmaking. You got to make sure that you show to everyone else that you're willing to put in your own effort to get the movie done. Otherwise, they won't feel as encouraged to do so themselves.
Yeah, and I think that really came across, for budget reasons, but also just the fact that they were modelling the way. And in fact, in one of the critical key scenes, there's a van and a caravan get destroyed. Well, actually, the bongo van that was used in the movie was actually George's, so he completely destroyed his own asset, if you will, because that's the only van they had. And I think that's what makes the movie so good, is that there were literally so many one takes in this movie, simply because they couldn't afford the second take, or they destroyed the asset.
Oh, yeah. And I think if you're a director not willing to sacrifice for your movie, I don't think you're a director worth following to the very end of the project. And I think George Miller definitely was someone to follow all the way through.
Yeah, he was.
Just to get rid of your own van like that.
Well, I think the other thing was
cool shot.
You and I were lucky enough to go to the 40th anniversary of Mad Max, and we got to see a number of the actors who were in the original movie were there, but just there was a screening which I'd never seen before, and I don't think you had either, sort of behind the scenes documentary.
Yeah.
Which just showed George and Byron carrying the cameras around, setting up mounts, just looking at all different things and literally doing all the hack work they did along with the rest of the team. So it was a very collegiate, collaborative. There really didn't seem to be any hierarchy there. Did you notice that?
No, and that's quite like the norm when it comes to, it's a real like independent, really low budget film, and it's just great when you see something like a small independent film. There is no hierarchy, and that's the best kind of film, like independent film there is.
Yeah,
because you get hierarchy when you get the huge budgets and stuff like that, and that kind of comes as a necessity. But when you observe, as we did in that documentary, and you see them all helping out, it looks so much fun. Like, it looks like such a good time.
It was, wasn't it? I think that was the other thing too, that they were having a lot of fun. They were young and very creative and really pushing the boundaries. And I think that was the other thing. Great leaders also are inspirational. I mean, I don't know a leader I've worked for that wasn't inspirational. Have you ever? You've done a lot of yacht racing as well as, and you've done coaching, and you've done lots of things at school as well. Have you ever followed someone that didn't inspire you?
No, you can't put a name to someone like that, because every leader has to inspire. Otherwise, you're not going to follow them. They're not going to be a leader to you that's worth following if they're not inspiring.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I got a little more background to this in one of Steve Bisley's books. And Steve Bisley, who played the role of Goose, just a fantastic Australian actor. We love Steve. And he's a great author too, by the way. He mentioned that on the first time that he and Mel, who were great mates, Mel Gibson that is, great mates at NIDA, when they were called in, I think by the general manager of NIDA, if I'm right, they called in to meet George Miller, and they went in there and they were so inspired by George's vision about doing it. And then Steve said he took the script home and he read it, and he just said, I just couldn't wait till the morning to come, because as a motorcycle rider, as an actor, the role of Goose, he said, I was just determined to do Goose. I just had to be, that was my role, and I was so determined to do it. Now, when you have that, someone's inspired you. Not only have they inspired you, they've now said, hey, you can add to this as well. They created an inspired vision. So it wasn't just, hey, this is my way or the highway. They were like, these are the roles. This is where we've got to so far. What do you guys think?
Yeah. And as script as well, doing that to someone and being and coming from people who are inspiring as well, that obviously he's read it, and over the night he's just been so excited thinking of all the ideas he's come from with the script that he wants to bring to the table. And he wasn't the only one who had that. Clearly we had Hugh Keats-Byrne.
Yeah.
Also very much
like that.
Well, I think
that's, Hugh Keats-Byrne's a really interesting one, because unlike Mel and Steve, who was just I think, had just finished NIDA, and they were in their final year.
Yeah, that was super young.
The other thing of what a great leader does is find his first followers, find the great people who are going to create more leaders. So a great leader creates more leaders, and they also look for people who are credible and that other people will follow. And I think the kind of appointment, if you will, or the selection of Hugh Keats-Byrne was absolutely critical by the team, because Hugh was a Shakespearean trained actor. He was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. He was a very theatrical. He was very experienced. Happened to be handy. He also rode motorcycles as well, which was also handy for this movie. But the selection of him, I think, as you said, was very pivotal, because he brought a lot of things to the movie, didn't he?
Yeah, just his character, and he really filled, when you're reading a script, there's the script writers put in little directions and how they walk or where they go and blocking, and then there's the actual words that they say. But you got to add a whole life to that, and a whole lot of life experience behind that to really add depth. And when you're watching Mad Max, you're looking at this character who's obviously been around, become a total insane lunatic over years. But that's just Hugh Keats-Byrne. He's a Shakespearean actor. He's just a regular dude if you met him outside the film set, but he's a total maniac on screen. Right,
because he brings that character to life. And I think that was a really great point about what he did. And, one of the things he did was they rode, the guys who were in the gang, if you will, in Hugh Keats-Byrne, who played the role of toe cutter. He said, hey, but why don't we ride our bikes from Sydney to Melbourne? Yeah. And really bond as a group. And what a great idea. And so this group literally, as you see in Mad Max, actually rode. And maybe you saw them back in the 70s, but they actually rode from Sydney to Melbourne as a group. And I remember at one point, Hugh Keats-Byrne makes a point that he actually had the bike all dressed up like in Mad Max. And he said he had this axe tucked in on the back of the bike. And he was so paranoid that if ever braking hard or dropping the bike at some point on the way down to Melbourne, that the axe would cut his leg off. So he was paranoid wherever that thing was. But that's literally what they did. They kind of had the whole group together, and that was his idea. And I think that's when, as you said, a great team then forms, and they bring their own ideas.
And they clearly bought into that idea as well. They all rode down with him to do it.
They did. And we got to hear from Johnny, the guy who plays Johnny the Boy.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying how much Hugh Keats-Byrne really did lead that group of people, and would get them to do interesting things. And he'd look at a script and go, you know what, we could do it this way. Now you and I were watching an interview slightly off the track of Mad Max, but we were watching an interview with Clint Eastwood. Do you remember that? And he was asked, what's the secret to producing a great movie? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said, 75% of the movie's done if you get the cast right.
Yeah, pretty much. Your role as a director is done once you got the good actors there. And then the rest is just collaborating with them.
Yeah, because they buy, and I think he said, because if they buy into the vision, they buy into what you're trying to do, it's just so much easier to get the job done.
They just elevate whatever's there on the page to whatever great thing you can, like the potential of the script. They bring it out fully on the screen, and that's what they did.
Yeah, they really bring it alive. And there was this point where in the movie, I think it was Johnny the boy is asked by Huey, says, "Look, when I get off the bike, can you just walk beside me and ruffle my hair and just do my hair properly?" And Johnny the boy, when he's acting, goes, "What are you kidding me? What am I going to do? What do you want me to do?" He goes, "Just walk beside me, fixing my hair, just fixing my do." And he said, "Okay." So in the movie, he does it, and when you see it, it makes so much sense. But at the time when they were filming it, they were like, "This is kind of weird." But when you look back at that movie, and it was really just to elevate Hugh Keys-Byrne, or the toe cutter's role, as the absolute leader of that group. So he takes his helmet off, which he would have known, always ruffles your hair. You always have flat hair after you take a helmet off. And it was like, just do my hair up and how it should be. And so just little tiny things like that weren't in the script, it's decided on the day. But that is not decided so much on the day. That's Hugh Keys-Byrne thinking about it, going, how can I make this really good? How can I bring this to life? And I think when you're leading a team, have you got people in your team that are like that are passionate about it, they're going, how about we do this? And I think sometimes that when we are leading teams, we've got to be careful that we encourage people to do that. Like we enable people and empower people to bring ideas forward. And I got to tell you, I see a lot of this. I find a lot of baby boomers and veterans generationally in business really struggle with the ideas from millennials and Gen Zs.
Oh, okay.
They come up with the ideas and they just shut them down. Yeah. They just shut them down. Sometimes they go because they don't have time, but it's a really bad habit to get into shutting them down, because if you shut them down time after time, eventually you'll have no ideas. Yeah. The only ideas will be yours, and your good people will drift away.
You need that fresh perspective that might offer some key insights that
you don't know.
People wouldn't have seen.
Because most people love to stay invested in the status quo or what they think is normal, and it's not. And when we talk about that, let's put that back in the context of Mad Max, because the other thing that they did was to challenge the process.
Oh, yeah.
So the process of the way a movie was made. And I remember a lot of people in cinema and theatre went, these guys they're off their nuts. Like, what the frick are they doing?
And they were, but thank God.
Well, they were, but then they had to find someone who went, hang on a second. And I think one of the key people, there was a couple of key people. One of them was David Egby, who was the director of photography, who said, you know what, no one's really done this before. No one's had a go at this. I think I can do some really cool stuff by doing that. And I think one of the things that he did was to get that kind of low shot. Can you talk a bit about what I mean by that low shot and those low shots that he did?
I don't know if it was Johnny the Boy actor or the one of the stunt guys who's talking about the concept of getting the camera as close to the white line as possible on the road. So how close can you get the camera lens, or the camera itself, I guess, to the white on the road? And you can see that it's almost like this. You see it in cartoon shows or something. It's like the rolling of the road, and it's so close to the camera, and it's just so impossibly low.
Yes.
Like your face is scraping along the asphalt.
Yeah. And that had never been done, had it? I mean, we look at that now. Every movie does it. Every car movie, you look at John Wick, you look at Fast and Furious.
It's so much easier to do it now as well. But back then, we're hauling big 70s cameras and getting them as close to the ground as possible. It's like,
absolutely. They were huge. In fact, David Egby, when he was filming on the motorcycles, he couldn't wear a helmet. So they were doing like 160 kilometres an hour. And I noticed, we've got a great photo, we'll share it with you on the podcast. He's wearing boots. He's wearing motorcycle boots, but no helmet.
No helmet.
It's like he'd fall off and they'd go, well, the good news is his feet and legs are really good condition. Unfortunately, he has no head left because he said he could not get the camera close enough using any type of helmet, even an open face, kind of old style helmet.
They would have caught the wind a lot.
Well, he said at one point they were doing about 150 and he kind of lost concentration and he said that nearly just took off the whole camera. Now, you've got to realise this is, as you said, filming with film, not, digital. and going into the cloud. There just wasn't any of that. I mean, the
Yeah.
camera might have gone to the cloud, but that would have been the end of the story.
End of the footage, see you later.
Yeah, so I think finding someone like him who really said, you know what, I think I can do that. And again, he got his own F-100 truck and he built his own crane to lower the camera down. He sat in the back of it at incredible speeds, lowering that camera down so it was literally, as you said, scraping the road. And they had the riders and the drivers, with Max and Goose and the rest, come really close, or the Knight Rider, come really close to it. And I think that's what, and Tim Byrne, who was, Johnny the Boy, was saying that kind of camera work hadn't been done before. So as actors or stuntmen, they hadn't really even experimented with having a camera so low. But it just absolutely makes the movie. And when you see future movies, you see that was copied by David Egby.
And it's such a huge effort too. And it all came from this desire from George, which he's kept throughout the rest of the film with his directing style of action, is keep the audience with the action. We're not spectators. We're with them the whole time. And so traditionally you'd see, for example, movies like the bullet car chase, which does mix it up a bit.
It does, yeah.
The first part of that bullet car chase is actually mostly from the street, and you're just watching the cars go by, and that's how we usually filmed action. And in the second half of Bullet, we're with the cars again.
Yeah.
But we're with them driving, and George Miller wanted to do the same thing. I'm just talking about Bullet because another car chase
you talk
movie.
about Bullet because that's iconic, isn't it? As a car movie, and car and motorcycles in both. In that movie, what was interesting, I think, or parallel the two of them, was that both Steve McQueen and George Miller were passionate about having the sound not being music, the sound actually being the engines.
Yeah.
And so if you think about Bullet, that kind of the difference between Steve's Mustang, and I think it's a Dodge Charger, if I'm right, on the other car, the sort of big heavy drone of the Charger and the kind of high revving Mustang, the two of them giving that was the music.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies with Mad Max. You get the bikes, the sound of the bikes, those Kawasaki 900s that they had. And then you have the sound of the cars, the big V8s, the GDHO type of Falcons they had. Plus there was the Monaro that the Knight Rider had. And so you had that sound.
Yeah.
As opposed to sometimes you get this music overlay these days when actually the real interest is in the sound of the vehicles.
And the music is now just used so much just to direct our emotion watching it. But in the directing style of George Miller, we're with the action. We're holding on to the cars as they're racing down at 200 miles an hour, chasing each other. It's terrifying.
Yeah,
we're not on the side of the road watching them drive past and going, oh my God, that was fucking fast.
Yeah,
we're actually with them. And it's a really freaky thing. And when you low to the road with the seeing the road go underneath you so quickly like that, it's just exhilarating, and that's why it's so exciting.
And it's all before the era of GoPros, you and I, your brother Ben has got GoPros. I mean, we just don't. That is not that it's any easier to film that stuff, but you can mount them in different places, and the cost is so much cheaper.
So much easier, yeah. But it just shows you that the amount of effort they went to film it like that suggests they really wanted to have the audience be with the action.
Yeah, true.
That's the only reason why they went so far, because it's a lot cheaper to film cars just going by.
Absolutely, so much cheaper to go and do it, and you can have anyone in them as opposed to having the actual stunt people do it. Both those movies, incredible parallels between what they did, and also we got to chat with some of the stunt people, the stunt rider, Terry Gibson. We met Terry Gibson as well, who did all the riding. On the bikes, or a lot of the stunt riding with David Egby on the back, and again, he had to bring his own bike as a stunt rider, so it was like, come to Mad Max, have you got a motorbike? And in fact, the great story from Terry is Terry never rode Japanese motorcycles. He was a British motorcycle rider. He said, I had a fantastic Triumph, but George wanted the Kawasaki's. They wanted that kind of look and feel of the big four-cylinder Kawasaki, so he had to borrow a mate's Kawasaki Z1B and take that along. And imagine how good was his mate, because that would have been a brand new bike back then. It would have been probably equivalent to a $20,000 bike.
Go for the generosity of friends.
Yeah, good generosity of friends, and he had to use it. So again, the things they did, the experiments they had to do, and the way they had to ride, and of course, you're riding at those kind of speeds. Balance is really important. So have a guy behind you then sitting upright in the wind. I mean, the balance on the bike from Terry's point of view would have been amazingly hard to balance the whole thing.
Yeah, and just being directed while riding a bike, whether you're on screen or filming it, there's a lot of things going on inside your head to make sure it's all going okay.
Yeah, and knowing you've probably got one take, so you better get it right.
Yeah,
yeah, and so that's why
no room for second takes.
Man, the stuntman and that is a couple of shots. If you do see the movie Mad Max 1, have a look at some of the shots. There's a crash on the bridge where actually one of the bikes clips the guys in the head. Thank God they're wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
But there was It was a tough gig. It was a
Yeah.
tough gig when they were making that. I think the other thing, we started to talk about some of the other Mad Max movies, but one of the great things that leaders do is reward those who are passionate, who work with them and understand it. And I think if you think about what happened from there, I mean, there was Mad Max 2, Mad Max 3, and, you know, Mel Gibson was in each one of those, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so many of the team moved on to do Mad Max 2 and 3. But I think the thing that really blew me away was when George came back after so many years to do Fury Road, which was, when did that come out? Was that 2016?
2015.
2015, my God, it's like
that
16.
itself took years to make and develop and get there. So
That's an amazing movie. And look, you know, it harkens back to, I think, probably gets back to the closeness of all the original Mad Max 1 and Mad Max 2. I think Mad Max 3, in my view, it's still a good movie, but they went out, it was very Hollywood, wasn't it?
It was a different director as well.
Right.
For unfortunate reasons with Byron Kennedy passing away before on a location scouting. It's just George Miller, you know, not unique in that situation. I imagine decided he didn't feel like continuing, so they had another director. But George Miller did direct the action scene. You know.
Yes, and you can see that, can't you?
So when the cars come out in the third one with Thunderdome, it's awesome again. It's great. But the rest is quite a traditional Hollywood.
Yeah, it's very commercial. There's some great Australian actors got a role in that, didn't they? There's some great people in that in Mad Max 3. Of course, they had Tina Turner featured as well, so it was built more for an American market. I don't know whether you know that, but when Mad Max 1 went to the American market, they actually dubbed it. Because they didn't think the Americans would understand the Australian accents. I don't think they still do. But they actually dubbed it, which I can't quite imagine what that would be like. And I think it was called The Road Warrior. It wasn't actually called Mad Max.
I think the second one, The Road Warrior.
Maybe they did that. I think there was a different name for the first one over there, and they dubbed it. And it was still successful. So it was still a successful movie. But yeah, let's talk about Fury Road.
Oh yeah.
Well, Fury Road, I saw the return. To me, was very outstanding. The return of Hugh Keays-Byrne. So 36 years later, if I'm right, Hugh Keays-Byrne, who played the toe cutter in Mad Max 1, returns as a modern Joe.
Yeah, the big bad again.
The big bad guy again. What a fantastic reward after all these years that he comes back. And doesn't he just do the role so well? Just like he did when he took to the role of the toe cutter with a Morton Joe, I think he was just absolutely perfect for that role. So again, that kind of rewarding the people that have been on the journey, even though it was a long, long time ago, to come back and win that role, because you know Fury Road was definitely a bigger budget than Mad Max 1.
Yeah, well, Mad Max 1 over its lifetime in the box office, I think accrued over $100 million. So I think up until Blair Witch Project was like the highest earning film for like that level. I think.
Right.
Fury Road, $100 million budget.
Yeah.
So what Mad Max 1 had made was what they put into Fury Road, and that paid off just as well. So awesome. Still my favorite movie of all time. That's
like that's reward for effort as again. Now let's talk about Fury Road, because it had some fantastic talent in there as well. So we had some new talent in Charlize Theron, who played Fury. So kind of like the main role, wasn't it? And
yeah, she was really the protagonist of the film. It's not unique to Fury Road. I think Max is very much a Western kind of archetype in that, like the road warrior. He comes in and there's a story already taking place. So I think that happens in Mad Max 2 with the oil refinery place they're in.
Yes.
And that's like kind of their story.
Well, they're protecting, aren't they? They're protecting the fuel.
And I think Furiosa is also, you know, Max kind of walks in on this storyline happening. And so that's a very cool part of that.
Well, Max is also not played by Mel Gibson, which was the first time. So he's played because he'd be way too old, I imagine. Yeah. But Tom Hardy, who is just, I think, fantastic. And I think it was a great choice again by the casting team to have picked Tom Hardy, because I think he played it differently. I know Tom Hardy did connect with for the Mad Max role, so with Mel Gibson, and had a chat, and he sort of talked about the previous role and what the angle he'd bring to it. And I think that's definitely great, because you're not looking for a replacement, are you?
You know, the joke with Mad Max 2 is like he has 15 lines.
Right.
And that's who Max is. He's very subtle. He's very restrained. And so, you know, he's not meant to be played by an actor who wants all the attention. He never has been kind of that role. Correct. So Tom Hardy was perfect, because he's just an awesome dude in general. Like, you can't really fault that guy.
Well, because in Mad Max 1, that got set up though, isn't it? Because he was that kind of effervescent sort of play about husband and policeman, and then when the death happens, obviously with his with his family.
Yeah.
Sorry, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Mad Max 1.
You've had so long. You've had 40 years to see
Come
it.
on, people, get out there. Then he just completely changes and kind of becomes an introvert and, my actions speak louder than words type guy. So I think Tom Hardy was fantastic in playing that. But I think the other part of it was, which is interesting with Furiosa having such a strong role, that we were talking earlier that the editing of Fury Road was done by who?
It was done by, the editor, the Academy Award-winning editor now.
Correct.
Is George Miller's wife, Margaret Sixel, I believe her name is. Let me just confirm my information. But she had never edited an action film before. Apparently,
right.
That's what. Apparently, she asked George Miller, "Why do you want me to edit this film?" And he said, If I get a guy to edit this film, it'll be like every other action movie ever made." And I think that paid off because she won the Academy Award.
I noticed that though George didn't actually tell her though that it would take her 3 months to view all the footage they had.
There was a lot of footage. I think 470 hours of footage. And look, I'm not surprised. The amount of explosions in that movie, you had to have so many cameras rolling in so many places.
Yeah, there was.
Huge effort.
I think the other thing about that movie as well, it's like a small business, isn't it? I mean, we have a lot of people who are small business owners and people who listen to our podcast who've got a business on it, and it's the families involved, a bit like ours, I guess. And that's it. So George Miller's got his wife doing the editing for it, which I guess keeps him pretty close, I imagine, to what it was being produced like. But,
hi, honey, how's the film going?
How's the editing going? Get out of here, George!
What did you shoot?
So let's talk about that, though, because you were saying also when they put the storyboards together, but there was something like 3,500 storyboards. Was that right?
Yeah, 3,500 panels they put together. 5 artists, so do the maths. There's quite a lot of panels for each of them.
Yeah.
All the drawing. And they did that first. They didn't write the screenplay first. They wanted the visuals done first. And when you're watching a film, just the way every shot just feeds into the next.
Well, I love that from you're coming at it from an artistic and a producing view. I'm going to come from a leadership view on this one because I love the visual part of that. Is that when you're trying to get people to buy into your vision, you can't just rely upon the written word or auditory. You can bring it alive like they did. But you don't have to do 3,500 of the panels, but at least you do a whole lot of panels. People get to see exactly what you're trying to do, and then that allows them to add their connection to it or really deeply dive in, doesn't it? It uses all our senses. So I love that view that they did in getting people along, because we had some really interesting people in the movie, and we were talking to Zoe Kravitz, who people may recognise the surname, which is Lenny Kravitz's daughter, was also in the movie.
So it's a big all-star cast of people, and they all wanted to be there. I remember someone saying, they signed onto the movie just because they thought, this is the only time I'm ever going to get to do this.
This is going to be good no matter what. Yeah. This is going to be good. Because it's been so long, hasn't it? I mean, I think someone said to George Miller, do you think you'll do another one? He said, you're kidding me? It just about killed me, this one.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good reason why people decided to get involved.
When the film came out, there was actually a Twitter account opened in George Miller's name saying there was a new film coming out.
Right.
They'd already planned a new one. And it was fake. Twitter verified it. It had all these followers really quickly, and it was fake. And they suspended the account. The guy got into all this trouble. But then the official sources, quote unquote, said it's confirmed there is another Mad Max movie coming out. So
oh wow,
they do have ideas. They do want to make another one, because I think this one just did so well.
It did. Now, well, let's remind people how many awards did this win?
It won 6 Academy Awards overall.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's just insane.
And one of the criticisms I've kind of laughed at, some people who watch Mad Max, and maybe they hadn't seen the kind of early days, but they said, it didn't have much of a plot. No. What's your answer to that?
Heresy. No. Well, I think like any movie, you can really generalize a movie's kind of events and down to a small sentence. Like to say, like in one sentence, Fury Road, they go one way and they go back the other way. Like that's hilarious. Like good on you. That's a good joke. But this is a journey film. Like they do plot wise go one direction and go back the other. But I think there's a lot of value in the story they're trying to tell. This is a survival tale. Take what you can while you got it.
Yes.
And the end of the film, they're all going to ride off, and Tom Hardy catches up to them and says, "Look, you're going to ride out that way for 100 days plus. You're not going to find anything.
Yep.
We know that the Citadel. We're going to go back and take that." And I think even though as a film it might not be as satisfying to have a third act in a new location, it really is consistent with the survival theme.
Well, it made sense. It was logical, wasn't it?
It's logical in the world, so I'm okay with it.
And I must say, how many westerns have you seen where there's actually only went one direction, and they either blew something up or no direction? Let's talk about one of our favourite movies, Tombstone. They're in the same place the whole time. It's an awesome movie, but no one's going backward and forward there. They're in they're exactly
and
there.
I think as well, just in, if there's a small plot, I think a lot happens visually with the characters. There's a lot that happens, and I know because I've seen the movie a lot of times. Cause I really enjoy it. It's great and so much fun.
And again, people didn't think it'd come there. So I think one of the sort of principles that, as we were talking earlier about this, but is that, when you've got a dream, and that's exactly what George Miller had and Byron had back to do this movie, and they'd done a few short movies, even small ones together around Melbourne. A dream as big as this one was, you cannot do it on your own. You need people. And I think that's why I love the movie industry and the entertainment industry and seeing those big productions, because they are like little businesses. Every one of them's a business, and it gets its own financing, and it has its own accounting. Stick around in the theatre if you haven't done this and look at the credits, because that's essentially a mini business. And these people all disband and then come back together again, or they might do 2 or 3 movies. They come back, and it's a whole new company. It's like a new startup. It fires up again. There's a whole team and a whole squad, and people come together, and the A team comes together. And it is about that. You cannot get these things off the ground on your own. You need people to help you. So I think that's exactly those principles. Now, I'm pretty sure that George Miller and Byron didn't read any leadership books before they went and did this, but my God, they absolutely hit it, the top 5 in my view, which is, let's talk about those again. One is they modelled the way of what they wanted people to go and do, and George has always done that, even since the passing of Byron. They were inspirational themselves. They created a shared vision that everyone could buy into, right from Mad Max 1 to Fury Road. They appointed first followers, great leaders to help in Hugh Keys-Byrne and Tom Hardy in more recently, and obviously with Charlize Theron. They challenged the process. They still kept doing that. They filmed Fury Road, I think is in Africa, most of it, wasn't it? Was filmed there.
Namibia?
Yes, that's correct. So they challenged where you could film, what you could film, how you could do these things. And fifth, they rewarded people, for the effort, those who brought in the vision and got to continue on in other movies. So those sort of 5 key principles. And you can find out more if you really want to know. There's 5 principles that came out in a great book called The Leadership Challenge. And there's other principles of leadership, but I think those 5 are really key. And they were just really demonstrated by both George Miller, is obviously still doing it, and Byron right back in that first movie to Mad Max 1. If you haven't seen it, go out and see it. I've told you a whole lot about it now, but there's some great lines in that movie. There's some augmented lines. There's so many things they did. And I got to say, Finn, I was telling you about this. It was so exciting the other day to ride in on a motorcycle like I did into Clunes. Where they filmed Mad Max. So they actually filmed it there, the original riding scene with all the bikes coming. Clunes has not changed one bit. It's it's where they filmed obviously Ned Kelly with the late Heath Ledger. So it's a great little. I wish Clunes. I think Clunes. I wish they'd celebrate the movies they've made, and because it's a great little country town. Just really get behind it, because it's those sort of towns and the people in them that actually make those movies come to life.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So that's great, mate. We're looking forward to it. So is there any news on the next Mad Max, or any sort of tips of when you think they'll do it?
Well, on IMDb, it's credited as Mad Max: The Wasteland. But apart from that, I'm not sure. I think a few days before Mad Max Fury Road officially released, Tom Hardy signed on to do 2 more films. So fingers crossed we'll see more Tom Hardy Mad Max.
Yes.
Because that's awesome. And the world they've built, it's awesome. There's so much there, so much story. Ready to come out of that huge world they've made.
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We talked a lot about leadership, but also gave it a really strong Mad Max angle, and it was great to have along Finn. Who's absolutely passionate about his movies, and clearly that's what he's studying. So he should be, shouldn't he? Really,
got to be, yeah.
You got to be. All right, everyone. We'll look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks, Ben.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.